Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into one of the 20th century's most fascinating and kind of contradictory minds, Bertrand Russell. This was a guy who completely reshaped pure logic, but he was also a public rebel who challenged the very fabric of society.
And that question, well, that's the heart of the Russell puzzle, isn't it? It's what we're going to explore. How could one person be a master of this abstract, almost inhumanly precise logic, and at the very same time be this fiery public activist? It's a contradiction that is just so interesting. So on one side, you've got the architect of logic, right? He's searching for absolute certainty in the clean, perfect world of math. But on the other side, you've got the critic of society, a public intellectual who fearlessly took on war, religion, morality, you name it. To really get the whole picture, we have to start with that first part, his quest for certainty.
You see, Russell wasn't just part of a movement. He was a key figure in a revolution that completely changed the way philosophy was even done.
He was a huge champion of what we now call analytical philosophy, and the whole idea was pretty revolutionary. The thinking was, instead of building these grand, kind of fuzzy systems, philosophy should use the super precise tools of logic to dissect language and get to the absolute crystal clear truth of any problem. A perfect example of this is his famous theory of descriptions. For ages, philosophers were stuck on this puzzle. How can a sentence like, "The current king of France is bald," even make sense if, well, there is no king of France? Russell, using logical analysis, showed how to break the sentence down to reveal its true structure. He proved it wasn't meaningless, it was just plain false, and that right there was a total game changer for how we think about language.
And then came his intellectual Everest, the Principia Mathematica. He co-wrote it with his former teacher, Alfred North Whitehead. And this massive 3-volume beast, was honestly one of the most ambitious projects in the entire history of human thought.
Their goal was just breathtakingly ambitious. Seriously. They wanted to prove that all of mathematics, every single theorem, every proof, could be built up from just a handful of simple, undeniable logical rules. They weren't just trying to organize math, they were trying to prove that math was really just a very, very developed form of logic itself.
But here's the twist, and it's a big one. This very same mind, so deep in abstract logic, was also profoundly concerned with how we should live our lives. He captured it in this famous quote, "The good life is one inspired by love and guided by knowledge." And that leads us straight into the second half of his incredible career.
So what did he do? Russell took that exact same intellectual rigor, that demand for clarity and evidence that he used in mathematics, and he turned it like a powerful spotlight onto the messy, complicated problems of human society.
And when I say he turned his attention to society, I mean absolutely nothing was off limits. He used that same sharp, logical lens on the biggest pillars of our world: war, religion, education, power, even the whole institution of marriage.
Think about it. During World War I, when patriotism was at a fever pitch, Russell stood up as a committed pacifist. He used cold, hard logic to just dismantle the emotional, nationalistic arguments people were using to justify all the killing. This was a deeply unpopular, even dangerous stance that actually landed him in prison.
And this quote right here, wow, it just perfectly captures his critique of organized religion. For Russell, beliefs weren't just true or false in some abstract way, they had real-world consequences. He argued that we should build our morality not on ancient doctrines he thought were harmful, but on a solid foundation of reason and human compassion.
He was also decades, literally decades, ahead of his time on social issues. He took on the rigid Victorian idea of marriage, arguing instead for relationships based on mutual respect, on equality and personal fulfillment. And as you can imagine, this caused a huge public controversy back then.
So how do we square this? How do we connect these two seemingly different sides of the same man, the abstract logician and the passionate social rebel? Was there some common thread that tied it all together?
Well, this book is a perfect example of his unique gift. In works like his bestseller, A History of Western Philosophy, he took thousands of years of really complex thought and made it totally accessible to everyday people. He was a master at building that bridge between the academic ivory tower and the real world.
And what this timeline really shows you is that these two minds weren't sequential. They weren't separate phases of his life. He was publishing groundbreaking work in logic at the exact same time he was writing these searing critiques of war and society. He was living in both worlds at once, all the time.
And that right there, that's the connection. For Russell, it was all one big project.
It didn't matter if he was analyzing a mathematical proof or a social injustice. He believed in the absolute power of clear, critical, and courageous thinking.
So you see, he didn't just build these incredible intellectual systems for their own sake. He demanded that we actually use the clarity we get from logic to serve humanity, to build a better, more just, and more rational world for everyone.
And that, really, is the enduring challenge that Bertrand Russell leaves for us. He asks us to be both, to think with the cold precision of a logician and to feel with the deep compassion of a humanitarian. In a world that feels like it's drowning in misinformation and division, his demand that we use knowledge to build a better world is more urgent and more important than ever before.